Joining us now is the head coach of BYU. He is Mark Pope. And Mark, you had a team built, I thought, for a deep run in the NCAA tournament. What was it like after losing a heartbreaker to St. Mary's in the WCC semifinals to know that for this particular team, their chapter was done?
And it was really hard. I think we probably shared experience with a lot of teams around the country, especially for our group who had been competing, chasing this opportunity to play in the big dance for some of our guys 3 and 4 years with this senior group that hadn't been there in a long time and had set their sights on it. It was not a good locker room. We talk all the time about trying to have the best locker room in America, and we did for a lot of the season, but we didn't on that day.
You know, Mark, you played on one of the best college basketball teams that I've ever seen, the 1996 Kentucky team that won a national championship. You've been in the players' shoes at the highest level. How do you think you would have reacted if it was 24 years ago and you were getting ready for that run at Kentucky to have the tournament canceled?
I think we do. I think it literally is. You go through the 5 stages of grief, right? I mean, you do. You're like, this can't be true, and then you get angry, and then you try and do some bargaining, and it just is. Listen, in the context of what's going on in the world, it certainly doesn't seem that important. But for these young men who have literally dedicated kind of every moment of their lives in the pursuit of this opportunity. And for our guys who've overcome so many difficulties to get there, and they finally get it, they finally earn it. And then it's just through no fault of anybody. It's just taken away because of circumstance. It's just tough to swallow, but this is what athletes do. I mean, they'll raise up and find ways to make it into a positive and do great things with it. But in the moment, man, it was really tough.
Well, it's definitely really tough. And I think, your team was so unique in terms of how it was built together. You had a point guard in TJ Hawes who was older because he had done a mission. You had Jake Toulson, who was a grad transfer, who was coming to BYU for 1 year. And then you had Yoli Childs, who was as dominant a post player as we had in college basketball, who was thought to be going to the NBA. He came back and he really just tore up the sport the last couple of months of the season. Do all those things make it harder?
I think that the thing that makes it hardest is these guys don't get another chance, right? They had fallen short, in their first 3 years at BYU, and then they finally earn it, right? And then they don't get a chance to run in it. And I think that's the thing that makes it toughest. But the thing that makes it a little bit easier for us is we had a season full of these incredibly epic moments that a lot of college basketball players never get in their whole career. And our guys stuffed them all into one season. Winning at Houston and the unbelievable success we had at Maui and the huge win streak to finish the season, including the senior night at our place against Gonzaga, which was one of the I'm telling everyone in the world it was the most epic senior night that ever has taken place in college basketball. A bunch of game-winning shots. We were really blessed. This basketball season has been a real blessing to us. We've been, really fortunate, and so we don't get to enjoy the postseason run, but we sure were blessed during the regular season.
Well, Mark, you've done a great job, obviously, taking BYU to high heights right now in your first year in Provo. How do you sustain it?
That's a great question. We got to recruit really hard, which we actually have some extra time to do now. It's actually a benefit in our recruiting that we can't go see these recruits in person. I'm way better on the phone than I am in person, so I think we're making some huge strides right now. And this is a program with unbelievable tradition and history, and within a ridiculous fan base, a completely psychotic and beautiful fan base that you just don't get any better. And so we have a lot of good things going for us, and certainly what these guys did and bringing some attention to the program will help with recruiting, and so we'll just hit it hard.
Mark, I look at your conference and I look at the move to go to 16 league games and give you guys a little bit more flexibility in terms of scheduling. And obviously, Gonzaga, BYU, St. Mary's had outstanding seasons. You all would have been single-digit seeds in the NCAA tournament. But I also see a league right now that has usurped other mid-major leagues in terms of its presence nationally. As big as it was for BYU this season, how big is it, and this goes beyond the teams that were going to play in the NCAA tournament, for the WCC to show nationwide this year what they could do beyond its greatest brands?
This league is good. It starts with the unbelievable coaching in this league, right? You think about it, you have leagues that, have coaches in this league. The top 7 coaches in this league have all been distinguished at other programs and had huge success. And you look at, a school like Pepperdine that has, Lorenzo Romar in there just crushing it right now. It's so exciting. And Herb Sendek is such a big-time coach. And the coach, of course, Fuey and Randy Bennett. And it's a great league. I mean, we spent most of the season with 5 or 6 teams in the top 100 or close to it. And it keeps you awake late at night trying to prepare for these, to compete against these teams and coaches. It makes it really fun. It's one of the few only basketball leagues in the country, right, where basketball is the priority, and it certainly has been a special experience for us.
Well, Mark, obviously you're going to recruit from your phone. Obviously you're going to be in a situation where you're monitoring things for the future of BYU, but somebody in your past made some pretty big news over the weekend. Your former head coach, Rick Pitino, is ready to write his next chapter, taking the head coaching vacancy at Iona. What were your emotions like when you saw Coach P return to college basketball?
I was so happy. Listen, for all of us that had the terrifying and excruciating and painful opportunity to play for Coach, I think the bond that we have with him is I think it's rare in your life. Do you get to meet and work with somebody who puts so much pressure on you that it actually changes your DNA as a human being? And all of us have such an incredibly deep gratitude for what he did for us. I will love him forever. He changed me in so many ways and made me better in so many ways. And so I'm really excited to have him back in college basketball. And I'm going to call him later today and see if we get a home and home.
It's funny, and you bring up something interesting right there, that he puts so much pressure on you to change your DNA on a daily basis. What do you mean by that specifically?
Well, listen, I mean, Kentucky helps, right? Because you're just living under so much pressure. But he is so demanding, and he gives you no quarter to hide. He does not allow you to pass the buck or blame someone else, or he forces you to take personal responsibility for what you're accomplishing every single day, relentlessly. That you really have 2 choices. You can either roll over and die, or you're going to grow. And it's a gift. It really is. And he's had as much influence on my life as anybody I've ever worked with, and I'll always be so grateful for him. I love him. We had this incredible opportunity to have him out here when I was coaching Utah Valley last year, and he came, visited, and we spent some time. I actually told my daughters, I have 4 daughters, and they've heard all the stories about Coach Pitino and how terrifying it was and how hard it was. And so he's a week out from flying in, and I realized I have to drive to the airport and pick him up. I kid you not, for a full week, I was in a full-on sweat, like heart racing, and then we had it was if I could choose moments of my life, the day and a half we spent together was just magic, and it just is. It's the best of sports when a coach and a player, when a coach is generous enough and forceful enough to really change your life. I think there's a bond created that's really extraordinary. And like I said, I love him forever. I'll be so grateful for the rest of my life.
Well, great tales there, Mark, about Coach Pitino, the new head coach at Iona. For you personally right now, if you're not recruiting, you're going to have some time right now. What's on the movie list for Mark Pope here coming up the next couple of weeks?
No movies right now. We're doing, spend a lot of time with my guys individually in the office, just doing exit interviews and talking about postseason stuff and working on calendaring for them and kind of working on lists of the things that they're going to work on over the summer, and trying to manage our staff a little bit right now. So it's the great thing about being a college coach is there's a lot of diversions. There's a lot of things that we need to cover and go over, especially for a program that's really, really anxiously trying to grow like ours. So it's we don't have a tough time filling the time.
Well, Mark, we appreciate a couple minutes. Congratulations on an outstanding first year as the head coach of BYU. Stay safe out there, and again, thanks for giving us a couple minutes today.
Hey, let me just say, it's amazing, okay, for you to get all these head coaches to actually figure out how to jump onto this deal today. I mean, you're amazing, because something happens when you go from an assistant to a head coach where you just become the dumbest technological human being in the world. Congratulations, man.
I appreciate it, Mark. I got a great team behind me here. It's stuffed. And BYU head coach Mark Pope with a great first season. Safe travels, obviously, and most importantly, stay safe.
Thanks, John.